The knock came at exactly 12:17 in the afternoon, loud enough to shake the old wooden frame of my apartment door and rip me out of the silence I had spent 8 months building around myself. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something about the desperate rhythm of that pounding felt wrong, like panic wrapped in human hands. When I finally opened the door, my breath caught so hard it felt like my chest cracked open from the inside. Standing there was Celine Hartwell, the woman who had once promised to spend forever with me, soaked from the sudden summer rain, trembling, mascara streaked down her pale cheeks, wearing the oversized gray hoodie I thought had disappeared from my life along with her. And in her shaking arms was a tiny cardboard box clutched against her chest like it contained the last fragile pieces of her world. Before we go further, if you believe people deserve kindness, healing, and second chances, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Vibes. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the heart breaks only so it can learn how to love again. For a moment neither of us moved. The hallway smelled like wet concrete and rainwater drifting in from the stairwell window. Her eyes looked swollen from hours of crying, but underneath all that pain was something even heavier. Fear. Real fear. The kind that changes a person overnight. I remembered those eyes once sparkling across coffee shop tables, glowing during long drives with music blasting through cracked windows, softening whenever she used to fall asleep against my shoulder during movies. But the woman standing before me now looked like someone who had walked through fire alone. 8 months earlier, Celine had left without warning. No screaming fight. No dramatic betrayal. Just a quiet goodbye that landed harder than any explosion. She told me she needed more from life than what our small apartment and simple routines could offer. She wanted adventure, success, movement, excitement. She said I was good, too good maybe, but that loving me felt like standing still while the rest of the world kept running. I still remembered watching her suitcase roll across the apartment floor while every word I wanted to say got trapped behind my teeth. After she left, I spent weeks staring at the empty hook where her keys used to hang. I stopped playing guitar. I stopped answering friends. I stopped believing people stayed. And yet there she was again. Wearing my hoodie. I noticed her hands first. They were shaking so badly the little cardboard box nearly slipped from her grip. I stepped aside without thinking, and she walked into the apartment slowly, like someone entering a church after years away from faith. Rainwater dripped onto the floor behind her. The hoodie hung loosely on her smaller frame, faded now from overuse. I remembered buying it during a cold autumn trip to the mountains, when she had stolen it from me because she said it smelled like safety. The apartment was different now. Cleaner. Quieter. Emptier. I had rebuilt my life piece by piece after she left. New curtains. New furniture. Different routines. But pain has a strange memory. The moment Celine sat on my couch, it felt like every lonely night returned at once. She kept staring at the box in her lap before finally opening it with trembling fingers. Inside were photographs. Old ones. Us laughing beside a roadside diner. Us dancing badly in the kitchen. Us sitting on the hood of my car watching fireworks. At the very bottom was a folded hospital bracelet. That was when I realized this visit wasn't about nostalgia. Celine had spent the last 8 months chasing the life she thought she wanted. She moved to another city with a man named Adrian Vale, a wealthy entrepreneur who promised her luxury, excitement, and opportunities. For a while, social media made her life look perfect. Expensive dinners. Rooftop parties. Designer clothes. Beautiful lies. But behind those smiling photos was a reality nobody saw. Adrian controlled everything. Her schedule. Her friendships. Her phone. Her confidence. Slowly he isolated her from everyone who once loved her. He convinced her she was nothing without him. By the time she realized she had traded peace for appearances, she felt trapped inside a life she no longer recognized. Then came the worst part. 3 weeks earlier, Celine discovered she was pregnant. Instead of support, Adrian reacted with anger. He accused her of ruining his future. He disappeared for days at a time, returned drunk, and became someone even she no longer recognized. One night after a brutal argument, he told her to leave and never come back. She packed what little she could carry and spent days sleeping in cheap motels, terrified and alone, before finally returning to the only place that had ever truly felt like home. My apartment. My hoodie. My heart wanted to stay angry. It should have been easy. She had shattered me once already. But watching her sit there silently crying while trying to hide the way one hand rested protectively over her stomach broke something inside me all over again. Some people leave your life, but a part of you keeps loving them quietly no matter how hard you try to bury it. The next few weeks changed both of us. Celine moved into the spare room temporarily because she had nowhere else to go. At first the apartment felt painfully awkward. We moved around each other like strangers carrying shared memories too heavy to mention. Mornings were quiet except for the sound of coffee brewing. Afternoons passed with distant politeness. But grief has a way of softening people. Slowly the walls between us began to crack. I started noticing little things. She still hummed softly while cooking. She still tucked her knees beneath herself when nervous. She still smiled at dogs through windows like they were celebrities. But now there was also exhaustion in her. Deep exhaustion. The kind caused by surviving too much for too long. One afternoon sunlight poured through the kitchen window while Celine sat at the counter staring blankly at medical bills spread across the table. Her shoulders looked so small beneath that gray hoodie. I realized then that heartbreak had changed us differently. I had become guarded. She had become fragile. And somehow, despite everything, we began helping each other heal. I drove her to doctor appointments. She helped me rediscover music by asking me to play guitar again during sleepless evenings. We started talking honestly for the first time in years. About fear. Regret. Loneliness. The pressure people feel to chase lives that only look beautiful from the outside. She admitted leaving me was the greatest mistake she had ever made. Not because life became hard afterward, but because she finally understood peace mattered more than excitement. She said I was the only person who ever loved her without trying to change her into someone else. Still, trust does not return overnight. There were nights I lay awake wondering if I was simply a safe place until she recovered enough to leave again. There were mornings she cried quietly in the bathroom because guilt followed her everywhere. Healing was messy. Real healing always is. One rainy afternoon we visited a small lakeside park outside the city. The sky was gray, the water calm like glass. Celine sat on a bench wrapped in my hoodie while wind moved softly through the trees. She looked at me with tears gathering in her eyes and admitted something that nearly destroyed me. During the months she was gone, she kept that hoodie every single day because it reminded her there was once a version of herself who felt loved, safe, and enough. Whenever things became unbearable, she wore it to sleep because it smelled like the life she wished she never abandoned. I looked at her then and realized people are rarely just villains or heroes in love stories. Sometimes they are simply broken humans making terrible choices while searching for happiness. As the pregnancy progressed, fear slowly transformed into hope. The apartment that once felt haunted by absence began feeling alive again. Tiny baby clothes appeared folded neatly on the couch. Ultrasound pictures covered the refrigerator. Laughter returned in unexpected moments. One evening while assembling a crib together, we laughed so hard at our terrible instructions that Celine nearly cried from happiness instead of pain for the first time in months. But life wasn't finished testing us. Late one afternoon while returning from a grocery store, we found Adrian waiting outside my apartment building. The moment Celine saw him, all color vanished from her face. He stepped toward her calmly, but there was something cold in his smile that instantly made my stomach tighten. He told her she belonged with him and accused me of manipulating her. When she refused to go with him, his expression changed completely. Rage flooded through him so quickly it felt terrifying. What happened next lasted less than a minute but changed everything forever. Adrian grabbed Celine's arm hard enough to make her cry out. Instinct took over before thought could catch up. I stepped between them and shoved him back. A fight exploded right there in the parking lot under the burning afternoon sun. Years of heartbreak, anger, fear, and helplessness collided all at once. Neighbors gathered. Someone called the police. Adrian finally drove away screaming threats while Celine collapsed shaking against me. That night she admitted something she had hidden from everyone. Adrian had never hit her before, but emotional abuse had slowly convinced her she deserved misery. She had spent months blaming herself for his cruelty. Hearing those words shattered me because no human being should ever feel responsible for someone else's darkness. From that day forward, something shifted permanently between us. Not because everything magically became perfect, but because we finally stopped pretending we didn't still love each other. One golden evening near the end of summer, sunlight flooded the apartment while Celine sat by the window folding baby clothes. The room glowed softly around her. She looked peaceful for the first time since returning. I watched her quietly for a long moment before realizing something painful and beautiful at once. The woman who once walked away had returned completely different. Life had broken her illusions apart and rebuilt her into someone more honest, more human, more real. And maybe heartbreak had done the same to me. Weeks later, their daughter arrived during a stormy afternoon filled with thunder and panic and tears. Celine squeezed my hand so tightly during labor I thought my fingers would snap. But the moment that tiny baby cried for the first time, every broken piece of the past suddenly felt smaller than this new beginning standing in front of us. They named her Lyra. The first time Celine placed our daughter in my arms, sunlight slipped through the hospital blinds and landed softly across her tiny face. I looked at Lyra, then at Celine, and realized life sometimes circles back in ways nobody expects. Not to repeat old mistakes, but to offer people another chance to become who they were always meant to be. Months later, the apartment felt entirely transformed. Toys covered the floor. Sleepless nights became normal. Music returned. So did laughter. Sometimes I would find Celine standing in the kitchen holding Lyra while wearing that same faded gray hoodie, humming softly to calm her down. And every single time, my chest tightened with gratitude that love survived where pride once failed. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Vibes. Your support helps keep emotional stories like this alive for people who need hope during difficult moments. And before this story ends, tell us in the comments, do you believe true love deserves a second chance after heartbreak?